What's going on, everybody? Thank you all for joining me today. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit the like button because that is the most important thing you can do for me on this channel. What it does is that it helps to make sure that those who are subscribed to the channel will indeed get their notifications, and it also helps to push this video through the YouTube algorithm. Secondly, if you're new to the channel or maybe you've been ghost watching this channel for quite some time now, please do me a favor and yourself a favor by hitting the subscribe button as well as the bell notification next to the subscribe button so you can be notified whenever I release a new video. And lastly, please make sure you share this video out on your social media platforms to inform your family and friends about this news and information, and that does also help give me a little boost in the YouTube algorithm as well. And with the introduction out of the way, let's get into today's news. And today we are going to head back to Chicago, my hometown Chicago, where I love reporting news on, clearly, right? So let's head back over there because it's looking like Brandon Johnson, King Brandon Johnson, Emperor Brandon Johnson of Chicago, it looks like he's finally going to do something for the actual citizens of Chicago after committing hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to Biden's migrants. He's actually possibly seemingly going to do something and going to commit some money to the citizens. So let's see how this pans out and what this is all about. I want to pull up this news clip right here from Fox 32 Chicago, and let's get into it. Let's see what Emperor Brandon Johnson is going to do for the city.
Chicago's mayor is rolling out the first phase of a new program with the hopes of rolling back crime. He's starting it up in 4 of Chicago's hardest hit neighborhoods for crime, lack of education, and also issues with unemployment.
Welcome to beautiful Garfield Park as we embark today on a new way to imagine public safety across our city.
It's called the People's Plan for Community Safety. It's a community-led initiative built on collaboration with community groups, youth leaders, researchers, and businesses. The goal is to address historic disinvestment unveiled first in 4 neighborhoods.
In Austin, we'll focus on 2 block groups elected with the alderman, Jason Irvin, that lie between the West End Avenue and West Adams Street in Laramie and Laverne.
The program zeroes in on 4 specific neighborhoods: Englewood, West Garfield Park, Austin, and Little Village, and looks at specific blocks that have dealt with specific issues.
One of the big metrics is we need to drive those unemployment numbers down, right? I mean, you see, again, we are in some areas 25% compared to 8%. You look at some of the shootings that we're seeing in the city as well, and we've been very intentional not to only measure success based on violence, but how we invest in people.
Over a dozen different metrics were reviewed in deciding the blocks chosen. The most violent.
Let me rewind that really quick. What did he just say? Let me hear that one more time about measuring success.
We are in some areas 25% compared to 8%. You look at some of the shootings that we're seeing in the city as well, and we've been very intentional not to only measure success based on violence, but how we invest in people.
I want you to see how he's not clear on what he's saying. We want to measure success not just simply based on violence, but how we invest in people. I just want to be clear. I'm sorry. I want to hear that one more time.
As well, and we've been very intentional not to only measure success based on violence, but how we invest in people.
What does that mean? You see, stuff like that is what irritates me because they refuse to be specific about what they're actually going to do as it pertains to, quote, investing in people. They're never specific on anything. They always give you these vague and broad terms that's just left up to your interpretation. If you're not measuring success by a drop in violence, but how we invest in people, you then need to explain what that means to invest in people. And they're not explaining that. It's just left up in the air for you to interpret that for yourself.
A dozen different metrics were reviewed in deciding the blocks chosen. The most violent: CPD beats, school closures, unemployment rates, vacant lots, the absence of parks, and even libraries. $1 million will be issued next month to support community groups working in the 4 neighborhoods.
The median household income in Englewood is less than half of the city's average. And almost 40% of Little Village residents do not have a high school diploma.
Workers from the nonprofits will offer employment services, violence intervention, healthcare, and educational opportunities to residents in the 4 communities.
Only $1 million? Well, let's touch on what she just said here at the end. Okay, so that then now speaks to what I stated earlier, right? About them being specific about what it means to invest in people. What are you actually talking about? She didn't say anything really specific outside of the general things that we always hear. We're going to invest in, employment and violence, things of that nature. It's nothing specific, and we'll see how that turns out this time around, because we've heard that type of rhetoric before. But only $1 million in the face of spending close to $1 billion on Biden's migrants is absurd. What shows me that you're serious in these programs that you're essentially, I guess, going to implement, right? Or that you're going to invest in and amplify. How do you do that? By just simply breaking down $1 million between 4 neighborhoods? The disingenuousness behind that is insane, because once again, we have sat back here and counted Chicago's pockets on multiple occasions. And like I just stated earlier, we're approaching close to $1 billion if Chicago hasn't spent over $1 billion already on the Biden crisis and on Biden's migrants to house and protect and take care of and clothe and feed, right? And provide free health care to his migrants. We recently just did a live stream here discussing how to date so far in Chicago, they have fast-tracked Biden's migrants into permanent housing. They've already spent $42 million in fast-tracking illegal immigrants in Chicago into permanent housing, beautiful apartments on the south and west side of Chicago, to which they're covering their rent as well. $42 million in just that avenue alone. But you're telling me that you're going to invest in these neighborhoods that are impoverished, that need all the help in the world. You're only going to invest $1 million in programs that have been around forever and seemingly aren't working. But you're only going to give $1 million to break up between 4 neighborhoods in the face of giving up to $1 billion already to take care of Biden's migrants. That is absurd. That is absurd. Really let that sit on your mind for a moment. Close to $1 billion for Biden's migrants. Only 1 million to break down between 4 neighborhoods. You see, in closing, I want to highlight this point. Brandon Johnson and Democrats overall, in relationship to the Black community, they are not interested in actually closing any of these disparities that they love talking about. Now, when it comes to the disparities between Black Americans and other groups here in the country, right, their counterparts, other racial counterparts, the disparities, we can go on and on about that all day, about how blown out of proportion that they are, right? But it is those exact disparities that Democrats actually play on in order to gaslight Black Americans about these things, to get you to vote for them, just so that they can consistently do the least, to which on paper, and I've talked about this so many times, on paper, they can say, hey, look at what we did for you guys on the south side of Chicago. Brandon Johnson dedicated $1 million to you guys. And it sounds good on paper, but in reality, it has no effect. It's to no avail. This is akin to when we would often hear Kamala Harris state that with the child tax credit, we reduce Black child poverty by 50%. But then they never report on the fact that after the child tax credit expired, going into the next year, going into 2023, right? Back then, after the child tax credit expired, 1 month without the child tax credit, Black child poverty went up 40%. And that was just after 1 month without the child tax credit, right? We can only imagine how much higher it's gone up since then. But that goes to show you how they're only interested in victories that only exist on paper. As Malcolm X once stated, it's a victory that you can talk about, but it's a victory that you can't show me. Because on paper, that sounds good. Black child poverty reduced by 50%. But in reality, if only 1 month without the check passes by and child poverty as a whole skyrockets up 40%, were you ever really out of poverty? No, you weren't. That's manipulation. That's manipulation. And that's what you see going on here in Chicago. It's manipulation. Now, it's yet to be seen whether or not this stuff is actually going to pan out to be anything significant. I know it won't. I know it won't, because they're running the same game that they've been running on Black Americans. So I'm speaking about the Democrat Party and their relationship with Black America. That's why, as I always say, some of you might be getting tired of hearing me say it, but that's why you've been voting blue no matter who since 1964 to no avail. That's crazy, huh? You've been running this same experiment of being loyal to a party just for you to still need the type of assistance that Brandon Johnson is talking about in a city and state that is Democrat from top to bottom. This stuff shouldn't even be an issue anymore at this point. After 60 plus years of loyalty to this one particular party in a state and city that is Democrat from top to bottom, how is this even a thing? How do neighborhoods like this even exist? How do disparities to the degree that they exist between Black Americans and their counterparts, if the Democrats were who they said they were, how is that even a thing? Clearly, disparities within the Black neighborhoods and within the Black community is something that the Democratic Party wants to maintain, because I can always gaslight you on these disparities and trick you into believing and into assuming that we're going to do something significant for you while never doing anything. And at best, at bare minimum, doing the least, like what you see Brandon Johnson getting ready to do in Chicago, just so that they can technically say on paper, I did something for you. But in reality, when you look out your window, the neighborhood is still the same. It's the same that it's always been. So I'll leave it right there. I'll get off my soapbox right now, because we're going from today's news into my live stream type of dialogue. So I will save that type of talk for the live stream. So thank you all for joining me today. Please make sure you hit the like button on the way out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel. Share this video out on your social media outlets. And also, please make sure you follow me on Telegram at TD Media Group. The link to my Telegram is in the description box below, and it will be pinned in the live chat as well. Or I should say in the comment section as well. So thank you all for your time. And until the next video, peace. Have a great afternoon.